Today, we're diving into a legal option that's kind of flown under the radar when marriages get tough: judicial separation. It's this really powerful tool that offers a completely different path from divorce, and we're going to break down exactly what that means and how it all works. Let's jump in. So, when a marriage hits a really rocky patch, what's the first thing that comes to mind? For most of us, it's divorce, right? It feels like the final and maybe only way out. But what if it isn't? What if there's a legal alternative that's less of a full stop and more of a pause button? Well, that's exactly what we're going to explore. And here it is, judicial separation. It's a formal, court-ordered thing. Now, the super important part is that it gives a couple the legal green light to live apart. They're no longer obligated to live together. But, and this is the absolute key, it doesn't actually end the marriage. You're still legally husband and wife, which creates this vital space to breathe and figure things out. All right, so to make this all super clear, here's our game plan. We'll start with the what and the why, then we'll get into the 7 specific legal reasons you can even file for this. We'll look at the law itself, check out a huge case to see how it plays out in the real world, understand what happens after a judge says yes, and then wrap it all up with a quick need-to-know summary. So let's get into it. First things first, why does this even exist? What's its purpose in the whole complicated world of marriage law?
This is really the heart of it. Judicial separation isn't just some legal formality. It can be a genuine lifeline. Think of it like a structured timeout, you know? It gives you immediate relief from a bad situation, it carves out this protected time for reflection, and, who knows, maybe even reconciliation. And if that's not in the cards, you can see from that last point, it sets up a clear path for what comes next.
Okay, now this is really important. You can't just go to a court and ask for a judicial separation because you're sick of your partner's snoring. The law is incredibly specific here. You need to have a solid legal reason, and there are exactly 7 of them. Let's run through them. First up, adultery. Pretty straightforward, right? It's when one spouse has voluntary sexual relations with someone else. This is one of the oldest grounds you'll find in matrimonial law anywhere. Number 2 is cruelty. Now, this can be physical or mental, but the legal bar for proving it is actually way higher than you might think. We're going to see why in just a bit, but for now, just know that the courts do not take this term lightly. Third, we have desertion, and this isn't just storming out after an argument. Legally, this means one spouse has totally abandoned the other without any good reason for at least 2 years straight. The fourth ground is disease. Specifically, we're talking about a venereal disease that one person had and didn't tell the other about at the time of marriage. It might sound a bit dated now with modern medicine, but it really speaks to the importance of honesty and trust right at the start of a marriage. Fifth on the list is insanity. This applies if a spouse has been suffering from a continuous mental disorder for at least 2 years and is so severe that it's just not reasonable to expect the other person to live with them. Number 6 is apostasy. This is when one spouse formally renounces their Hindu faith and converts to another religion. It's a complex issue for sure, but its inclusion here shows how the law viewed shared foundational beliefs as a cornerstone of marriage. And finally, the 7th ground covers these incredibly serious criminal acts. If one spouse has been found guilty of rape, sodomy, or bestiality, that is grounds for the other to seek separation. This table lays it all out so well, but I want you to focus on that last column, proof required. See, the court doesn't just take your word for it, you have to prove it. For cruelty, that might mean medical reports. For desertion, you might need neighbors to testify. The bottom line is, the burden of proof is always on the person who is filing the petition. All right, so let's zoom out a little and look at the legal machinery behind all this. The entire process is neatly laid out in specific sections of the Hindu Marriage Act of 1955. You can almost think of these sections as the official rulebook. Section 10 is what opens the door. It gives you the right to even ask for a separation. Section 23, which we just covered, gives you the reasons why. Then you have this big chunk, sections 24 to 33, which gives the court the power to make those really practical decisions about things like money and kids. And finally, the last few sections lay out all the procedural stuff. It's a pretty organized system. So all this legal theory is great, but how does a judge actually apply these rules in a messy, real-world situation? To get a feel for that, we're going to look at a landmark case that helped define what is probably the most common and most argued over ground, cruelty. This quote from this 1968 case, it really gets to the heart of it. The court made it crystal clear. Cruelty has to be of a grave and weighty nature. In other words, just being unhappy or not getting along isn't enough to meet the legal standard, not even close. So let's break down what happened here. The wife made claims of cruelty.
But the court's job was to figure out what cruelty actually means in the eyes of the law. And their logic was simple but powerful. The behavior had to be so bad that it made living together totally unbearable. This principle is so important because it stops the courts from getting bogged down with every single marital spat. It sets that high standard for what legal cruelty really is.
Okay, so let's say a judge grants the decree of judicial separation. Now what? What are the actual practical results, and what legal paths does that open up for the couple?
This flowchart maps out the journey perfectly. It all starts with one person filing the petition. If they succeed, the court issues the decree, and the couple starts living apart. Right away, the court can also grant immediate help, like ordering one spouse to pay maintenance or deciding who the kids live with. But check out that final step. The marriage isn't over. It legally continues. And here's the kicker. After 2 years, that separation itself can become a brand new reason to file for a full-on divorce.
Whew, okay. We have covered a ton of ground, so let's lock it all in with a super quick final summary. This is the stuff you absolutely need to remember. All right, let's nail this. What is it? A legal separation, not a divorce. What's the status? The marriage is still on. You just don't have to live together. What are the grounds? 7 specific fault-based reasons from Section 23. What kind of relief can you get? A court can order support payments and decide on child custody. Can it lead to divorce? Yes. After 2 years, it can become grounds for one. And the key laws? Section 10 and Section 23. Got it? Good. And that brings us to our final thought for the day. This entire legal framework, all of it, is built on a law from 1955 and is centered around this idea of fault. So the huge question we're left with is a system based on blame, designed for a different era, still the right tool to help us navigate the incredibly complex realities of relationships today? That's definitely something to chew on. Thanks for watching.